In the last 3 months alone, I've seen 2 older adults hospitalized, not from illness, but from things they did every night without thinking. And both said the same thing: I didn't know it was dangerous. If you're over 70, there are 4 bedtime habits that could quietly increase your risk of stroke, heart strain, or even a fall that changes everything. I've worked in end-of-life care, therapy, and family support long enough to say this with confidence. It's not the big emergencies that get you. It's the small, nightly routines you've never questioned. Let's talk about them, clearly, calmly, and before it's too late. I remember Edna. She was 76 when her daughter called me in. She'd been complaining about poor sleep, some chest tightness at night. Nothing dramatic, just discomfort. Her vitals were good, her routine solid. She read before bed, drank chamomile tea, watched the news quietly with her cat, Louie. But she had one habit, and that one habit was enough to quietly wear her body down. Edna liked to eat late. It was comforting for her. A bowl of creamy pasta around 9 p.m., sometimes a grilled cheese and soup. She's always eaten late, her daughter said, even when I was a kid. And that's what makes these dangers so hard to talk about. They look like comfort. They feel like routine. They are love in their own way. But here's what we know now. As the body ages, especially past 70, digestion slows down. The muscles of the esophagus lose tone. The stomach empties more sluggishly. And when we eat heavy meals too close to bedtime, that process is not just uncomfortable. It can become quietly dangerous. In Edna's case, it wasn't just indigestion. It was silent acid creeping up into the throat during sleep. Inflammation, interrupted rest, and elevated blood pressure that would spike without warning in the early hours of morning. That pattern: heavy food, shallow sleep, heart working harder than it should. It's something we've seen over and over in post-stroke assessments, not as the sole cause, but as a contributing thread. Dr. Alston, a geriatric cardiologist I deeply respect, once said to me, "The heart in an 80-year-old body is not fragile. It's just tired of compensating. And it compensates constantly when digestion interferes with rest, when the body is forced to multitask at a time when it was meant to let go." This doesn't mean we shame people for what they eat, or strip away their evening joys. It means we reframe how and when comfort is offered. Instead of the full meal at 9 p.m., could it be a warm drink at 7? Could it be a lighter dinner earlier and something soft? A banana, some applesauce, a spoonful of yogurt, if hunger stirs again before bed? These adjustments don't feel heroic. They feel subtle. But it's in the subtle that safety lives, especially in the later years. We often assume danger comes with drama. But in aging, danger often comes dressed as routine. And that's what makes it so easy to miss. When Edna eventually had a small stroke, she recovered, thankfully. The doctors couldn't point to one cause. But the late meals, the interrupted sleep, the silent strain, they all played their part. What stayed with me most wasn't the event itself. It was Edna's voice a few weeks later, when she said quietly, "I thought I was being kind to myself," and she was. But sometimes kindness needs to evolve with the body, because what once soothed us can, in time, start to harm us, if we're not paying attention. This doesn't mean fear. It means gentle awareness, because the body speaks, even in silence, especially in silence. There's something quietly sacred about the hours just before sleep. It's when the world dims, when memories surface more easily, when the body, if we let it, prepares to surrender its weight to rest. But for many people over 70, that surrender gets interrupted. Not always by fear, often simply by the need to go. Frequent nighttime urination, or nocturia, is more common than most realize. It doesn't sound serious, but over time it carries a weight we often overlook: fractured sleep, disorientation, increased risk of falls, and yes, even cardiovascular strain. I remember working with Leonard, 82, widowed, living alone, proud, polite, always in a pressed button-down even for phone calls. His daughter reached out after he had 2 falls within a month, both times in the middle of the night. He was waking up 2 or 3 times to use the bathroom. He'd stand up too fast, the world would tilt, and the floor would meet him before he could catch his breath. Leonard was lucky. No broken bones. Just bruised dignity, which, as you might know, can hurt worse. When I sat with him, I asked about his evenings. He would drink tea after dinner, sometimes water while watching TV. "Hydration's important," he told me, smiling. He wasn't wrong. But here's what many of us forget. As we age, our kidneys don't rest as they once did. They keep filtering through the night. The bladder weakens, and even small amounts of evening fluid can lead to frequent wake-ups, turning a night's rest into a broken rhythm. Now, what most people don't know is how these interruptions affect the brain and heart. Every time we're jolted from sleep, especially in older age, it activates stress hormones. The blood pressure surges. The heart rate adjusts. And if you rise too quickly, there's something called orthostatic hypotension, a sudden drop in blood pressure that can cause dizziness, fainting, and falls. Dr. Meredith Chong, a hospice nurse I worked with closely, used to say, "Most people think falls are about weak bones, but it's often about rushed moments. Moments like waking in the dark, standing before your blood has caught up with your body." For Leonard, the solution wasn't drastic. We adjusted his fluid intake. He had his last full glass by 6 p.m., a few sips of water with medication later if needed. We swapped his bedtime tea for a warm compress on his chest, something he later said felt just as comforting. Within weeks, his sleep deepened. He still woke up once, maybe, but with less urgency, more clarity. And most importantly, he didn't fall again. It's these small shifts that bring peace. Not because they fix everything, but because they remove unnecessary strain from bodies already working harder than we see. If you're still here, feel free to leave your thoughts below. I read each one with care. Every story shared helps someone else feel less alone. And in a world that often rushes past the elderly, just being seen and heard matters more than we say. There's more I want to tell you, because not every danger in the night is visible. Some come not from what we put into our bodies, but the air we wrap ourselves in. There's a quiet comfort in warmth. It reminds us of childhood, of being wrapped in quilts by someone who loved us, of winter nights when the heater hummed and the outside world stayed behind cold windows. So it makes sense that as we get older, we chase warmth, especially in sleep. But what many don't realize is that too much warmth at night can silently strain an aging heart. I saw this many times during home visits, especially in colder regions. Rooms with the thermostat set high, multiple blankets layered deep, sometimes even a heating pad still warm beneath the sheets. I remember Irene, 79, living in Minnesota. She called me not for a physical issue, but because she couldn't sleep. "I'm tired all the time," she said, "but I wake up sweating or just feeling strange." Her vitals were stable. Her diet was balanced. But the moment I stepped into her room, I understood. It was 76 degrees, heavy fleece blankets, no airflow. For a younger body, that might be fine. But for someone over 70, it's a different story. As we age, our bodies become less efficient at regulating internal temperature. We don't sweat as easily. We hold on to heat longer. And during sleep, when blood pressure naturally drops and heart rate slows, excess warmth can disrupt that rhythm. Instead of resting, the heart begins to compensate. Again, Dr. Elena Mora, a specialist in geriatric sleep health, once explained it this way: an older heart needs coolness the way a tired runner needs shade. When you take that away, even rest becomes effort. In Irene's case, we made simple changes. Turned the thermostat down to 66, swapped heavy blankets for breathable cotton, cracked a window slightly at night for airflow. Within days, her body began to settle. Her sleep grew deeper. She stopped waking drenched or disoriented. And something else happened: her mood lightened. Because poor sleep isn't just about tiredness. It touches memory, balance, even how we process grief. And one of the quietest culprits behind broken sleep in seniors is heat. Not in waves, but in stillness. If you ever find yourself tossing at night, heart beating just a bit faster than it should, if your mouth feels dry, your sheets too damp, it may not be worry. It may simply be that your body is asking for air. And that request is worth listening to. No need for drastic shifts. Start small. Lower the thermostat a degree or two. Switch to layered, breathable bedding so you can adjust with ease. Use a light fan or open a window not to feel cold, but to let the body breathe. The goal isn't discomfort, it's balance. We often think protection means piling on more layers, more heat, more insulation. But in aging, protection sometimes means subtraction, making space for the body to rest without interference. Because sleep, true sleep, isn't just stillness, it's trust. Trust that nothing is pulling your body into quiet distress. And trust begins with awareness of temperature, of breath, of what your heart needs now, not what it needed decades ago. There's one more place where this trust is often broken. A space so intimate we rarely question it. It's not what we eat, not what we drink, not even the room we lie in. It's how we lie down. For years, I never questioned the way people slept. We all have our habits. Some curl on their side, others sprawl like stars. And some, like Mr. Daniels, lie perfectly flat, arms folded gently across the chest, as if in quiet rehearsal for something deeper. He was 81 when his son asked me to visit. "Dad wakes up exhausted," he said, "even after 8 hours. He snores a lot. Sometimes I think he even stops breathing." When I met Mr. Daniels, he was sharp, witty, still drove himself to church. But during our first conversation, I noticed the signs. A slight hoarseness in his voice, shadows beneath his eyes, a shallow breath that took a little too long to refill. I asked him, "How do you usually sleep?" "Flat on my back," he answered. "Always have. That's just how I feel comfortable." But comfort, as I've learned in this work, is sometimes deceiving, especially after 70. Sleeping on the back, particularly for seniors, can quietly compromise the airway. Gravity pulls the tongue and soft tissues toward the throat. The airway narrows. Breathing becomes more labored, sometimes even interrupted. What many don't realize is that this position can increase the risk of sleep apnea, a condition where breathing starts and stops repeatedly during sleep. And though it might seem harmless, the consequences aren't. Each time the breath halts, even briefly, the brain jolts awake. The heart pounds harder to compensate. Blood pressure spikes. Oxygen dips. Over time, this pattern doesn't just rob rest. It exhausts the cardiovascular system. And yes, it can quietly increase the risk of stroke or heart failure. Mr. Daniels had never heard of sleep apnea. "I thought I was just getting old," he said. "That's the story I've heard again and again. We mistake struggle for aging. We normalize fatigue. We assume exhaustion is the cost of longevity. But sometimes it's not age. It's the angle of the neck, the slope of the spine, the gravity working against breath. Together, we made changes. We encouraged Mr. Daniels to try side sleeping, particularly on his left. Used a firm pillow behind his back to prevent rolling. Elevated his head slightly with a wedge. He called it awkward at first, like trying to teach an old dog new tricks. But within 2 weeks, his mornings were different. Less grogginess, fewer headaches, no more waking up gasping. And the snoring? His son said it was finally gentle, like real sleep, not a struggle. There's research behind all this, of course. The left side improves circulation, aids digestion, even reduces acid reflux. But beyond studies, there's what I've seen with my own eyes. The way someone's face softens after a real night's rest. The difference is visible, palpable. It's not youth returned, but clarity restored. So if you or someone you love sleeps flat on their back every night, consider it not as a flaw, but as an invitation. An invitation to explore ease in a different position. To offer the body a new path toward rest. To support breath, not just dreams. Because sleep isn't just unconsciousness. It's renewal. And how we lie down shapes whether our hearts feel safe enough to soften into it. There's one final piece I want to offer. Not a position, not a temperature, not a rule, but a perspective on aging, awareness, and the quiet power of noticing. When I began working with older adults, I thought the most important thing I could offer was knowledge. But over time, I learned that what people needed more was presence. Not answers, Not fixes, just someone willing to notice what had gone unnoticed for too long. I've seen how subtle the dangers become as we age. The body rarely yells, it whispers. And if we don't listen closely, those whispers turn into fatigue, into falls, into the things we thought came with getting old. But sometimes don't have to. Each of the patterns I've shared, eating too late, drinking too much before bed, sleeping too warm, lying flat on your back, they don't sound dangerous, but that's what makes them so powerful. They're quiet, common, wrapped in routine, often handed down like traditions, or left untouched because it's how I've always done it. But what worked at 50, or even 65, doesn't always work over 70. And that doesn't mean we've failed. It means we're still learning how to live in the body we now have, not the one we remember. I once sat with a woman named June, 84, in a hospice suite near the edge of town. She'd lived alone for years, fiercely independent. She had a gentle voice and kept fresh lavender on the windowsill. We talked about many things, her daughters, her garden, the smell of rain. But I remember what she said one quiet evening while the sun slipped behind the curtain. I wish someone had told me earlier that adjusting doesn't mean giving up. It just means paying attention with love. That stayed with me, because that's what this entire conversation is about. Not fear, not control, but love. For the body that's carried us all these years. For the heart that's still beating, even if slower now. For the nights that still hold the possibility of real, healing rest. So what can you do? You can listen gently to your own rhythms, to your breath, to your fatigue. You can shift things without shame. Eat a little earlier. Let go of that late-night glass of water. Lower the heat just a few degrees. Try sleeping on your side, even if it takes time. And most importantly, you can offer yourself patience. Because change isn't always immediate. But even trying, even noticing is an act of care. You deserve sleep that restores, not depletes. You deserve rest that doesn't feel like a fight. And if no one's told you this yet, there's nothing weak about making adjustments. It's strength, the quiet kind. If this kind of quiet reflection feels helpful to you, you're welcome to come back anytime. I'll be here, not with perfect answers, but with steady presence. That's what we all need a little more of, especially now.